This is Jeff Blauette, Cooperative Farmers Elevator Technical Agronomist. And on this week's Field Friday segment, I thought we'd talk about soybean aphids. It's getting to be that time of year. We're starting to see them show up in these fields. Some fields have them worse than others. I think the biggest thing that's changed now, here we are the early part of August here, and the temperatures have cooled down. The forecast is for them to stay more in the 70s and 80s versus where we were at 85 to 95 for a while. Aphids don't live near as long and don't reproduce near as well when we're in that 90-degree range like we were in most of July. But now that we've cooled off, I expect them to kind of get going, expand population, become a quicker problem. You know, we've got some rains here in the forecast. We've had a few little shots in some of our territory, but these beans are still under some drought stress. They're trying to do a lot right now. They're flowering. There's pod development going on. You know, the threshold for aphids is 250 per plant and growing. We maybe want to be a little bit quicker to pull the trigger as long as we're under some more drought stress on some of these lighter fields especially, but we want to keep an eye on them and make sure they don't get away from us. When the temperatures are cool, they can double in population every probably 2-3 days under ideal conditions for them. So, you know, 100 becomes 200 becomes 400 in a few days, and you know, with airplanes getting backed up sometimes, or if it's windy or the weather isn't conducive to spraying, it's hard to keep up once they explode. And the weather conditions we have could be conducive to that. So I think a couple of the other things that I look for on aphids, if we look at these examples, we've got some soybean aphids here on the pods. When they start getting onto the pods, they're sucking the nutrients out of that young developing pod, trying to send nutrients to develop that and the seeds within. We'd really rather have that go to the seeds and not into the insects. So when they start stacking up there, I really get a little bit more jumpy. Here's some pictures where they're developing on the new trifoliates. You can kind of see these are off the top of a plant where there's a cluster of flowers and the newly unfolded leaflets. They're starting to stack up in there because it's been cooler and they don't mind being up on top of the plant since it's not so hot. That's where all the new development's going on in that plant. So when they start showing up there, I think that's an indication the population's really expanding. If we look at some of the things that indicate that they're going away, it'll be a little while, but if we start seeing later on here a lot of winged aphids or a lot of you know, population decrease, obviously that's some things to look for, but it'll be a while. We're probably going to be looking at through the month of August having to worry about the aphids here. So we've got to keep an eye on them and not let them get away from us. We don't have the greatest of commodity prices, so we need every bushel we can. So I think it's something we really need to keep an eye on here going forward. If we're gonna, you know, have another decision or two to make, you know, we've talked about the fungicides in previous episodes. We've also got some data on some foliar micronutrients that can ride along in the tank. If the plane's gonna be in the air for an insecticide already, there's some pretty decent data that we have from our replicated trials on products like Max-In beans, which are a micronutrient package. Might be worth looking into the data we have on that and see if that's something that'll fit for your farm. I guess with that, I'll have a few other pictures here of some miscellaneous insects that we might also have out in the fields today. We've kind of seen a fair amount of webbed together leaves. They might be things like a thistle caterpillar. There's green worms that are clover worms or loopers that are out there doing some defoliation. Grasshoppers are showing up a little bit in this dry weather especially. So all of these things are all things that you need to kind of have an evaluation to see if they're worth treating for. So with that, that's our Field Friday segment for this week, and we'll see you next week.